You got a prediction for the fight, Logan?
It'll be a knockout for sure. Obviously, I'm saying a Jake Paul knockout, and I don't see this fight going more than 3 rounds, bro.
For the last 6 years, people have basically watched Jake Paul bulldoze through opponents that never really screamed danger. Retired athletes, older names past their prime, guys who weren't actually boxers, and the one time he stepped into something close to his own lane, another influencer boxer, he got walked down without much resistance. That loss has been hanging over his career ever since, whether fans want to admit it or not. After that, Jake went into rebuild mode, stacking wins and carefully climbing his way back up. And yeah, love him or hate him, he's still must watch. People always tune in, usually hoping for chaos. But this fight was different. What was supposed to be Tank Davis somehow turned into Anthony Joshua, and that jump is insane. That's not leveling up. That's skipping the tutorial and walking straight into the final boss fight. No disrespect to Tank, but Joshua is a completely different animal. The size difference alone changes everything, and the second you see them standing next to each other, reality hits hard. Some fans really convinced themselves this was about to turn into an anime moment, where Jake unlocks some hidden power. It wasn't, and honestly, from the jump, the vibes were already off. Backstage, Jake's hanging out with Tekashi 6ix9ine, who's literally dealing with probation issues and flexing an ankle monitor. That energy alone felt cursed. Then, you've got Logan Paul floating around in the background, trying to steal the spotlight. Instead of looking locked in, the whole thing felt messy and unfocused. And let's be real, 6ix9ine's music in 2025 isn't exactly strike fear into your opponent material.
That's a W. It's a guaranteed W. Guaranteed. Holy shit. It's bad on defense. Yeah, but I told him that
that was probably the best one.
Then came the Drake curse. Drake reportedly dropped 200 grand on Jake for a payout that was never happening. Once the fight started, Jake did land a couple clean shots, but the difference in power was obvious almost immediately. That moment everyone replayed was probably Jake's cleanest punch of the entire fight, and it barely did anything. If anything, the counter that came back looked like it hurt Jake more than Joshua felt his shot. That pretty much told you everything you needed to know about this matchup. Even Jake's best jab of the night looked decent on camera, but in real time, it wasn't changing a thing. Watching this felt like being underleveled in a video game. You're timing your moves perfectly, throwing everything you've got, trying different angles, and none of it matters. Every hit looks like it should work, but the health bar barely moves.
Official prediction, what are you actually feeling? You told me yesterday 6-7, I wasn't sure if you were actually being serious.
Yeah, 5th, 6th round knockout. I'm putting him to sleep.
By the first couple rounds, fans were already getting restless. Jake spent a lot of time on the canvas, not because he was getting knocked down, but because he kept dropping whenever pressure came his way. Instead of standing his ground, he was circling non-stop, ducking, weaving, doing whatever he could to avoid staying in the pocket for more than a second. It got to the point where the referee had to step in and say something, which kind of says it all. Nobody tuned in to watch someone survive. They came to see a fight. What they got instead was damage control stretched out over rounds. And when the final shot finally landed, there was no confusion. One clean, brutal punch shut everything down. Every replay showed the same thing. Jake folded fast, and for a second, he didn't even look like he knew where he was. The wild part is that he didn't go completely unconscious, which honestly says a lot about his chin. Most fighters wouldn't have stayed upright after taking a shot like that. That's the kind of punch you feel once and never forget, and you could tell Jake learned that lesson in real time. That still frame from the fight honestly tells the whole story. You can see it all over Jake's face. Everything swollen, everything shifted. The damage was undeniable. Right after the fight, Jake jumped on Twitter and posted an x-ray claiming he had a double broken jaw and said, "Give me Canelo in 10 days. Whether that was confidence or pure delusion, one thing was clear. He took serious punishment in that ring. And yeah, even with the loss, Jake showed enough toughness that people will still watch what he does next, but there's no way he can go back to fighting low-level opponents after this. That era is done. If he wants any credibility moving forward, the matchups actually have to make sense. A Tommy Fury rematch is one of the few fights that feels logical now, especially after everything he went through here. Throughout this fight, Jake spent a lot of time dropping down and tying up, especially whenever the pressure got heavy. There was even a moment where he reacted to a low blow and it looked exaggerated. It was confusing that no points were deducted, considering how often he leaned on those tactics just to slow the fight down. Most of the match, he wasn't really controlling exchanges. He was clinging on, trying to survive them, and then came the moment where it became obvious the end was close. Jake started stumbling, his legs looked shaky, his movement completely fell apart, and whatever balance he had left was gone. Whether it was fatigue or damage, something clearly gave out. Watching that sequence felt like seeing a stronger fighter sense weakness and close in slowly, calm, patient, unavoidable. Once that shift happened, the outcome felt locked in. This wasn't Jake fighting to win anymore, this was Jake hanging on. And right here is the exact moment you can tell it fully sank in that he made a serious mistake. You could see it on his face. The confidence disappeared, and in typical Jake Paul fashion, it still felt like he was more focused on selling the spectacle than actually locking in and adjusting. Even before the bell and during the rounds, he seemed more interested in trying to get under Anthony Joshua's skin than committing to a real strategy. There was taunting, faces, the tongue out, trying to turn it into a moment, but none of it worked. Joshua didn't react. He stayed calm from the walkout to the final exchanges. No emotion, no response. Just pressure. Honestly, it felt like Joshua could have ended the fight earlier if he wanted to, but instead he paced himself and let the moment breathe. Meanwhile, Jake kept trying to sell dominance while backing up and grabbing on. You can't sell control when you're retreating and tying up non-stop. At one point, Joshua clearly had enough and shut all of that down, basically telling Jake to focus instead of playing around. And right on cue, Logan Paul rushed into the frame, making sure his face was on camera. Before the fight, Logan picked his brother to win, which nobody expected him not to do, but during the fight, the body language told a different story. You could tell he was nervous watching it unfold.
That was incredible. In my view, that was a victory on all fronts. Minus the actual victory, of course, but no one expected him in the last 6 rounds with AJ. In my opinion, he won 4 of them. People will argue that he at least won 3. No one expected him to last that long. Rolled his ankle, broke his jaw, still fucking fighting, man. That's toughness.
Still, even sitting ringside, Logan couldn't help himself. Loud, distracting, pulling attention toward himself, while the reality of the situation kept getting harder to ignore. At one point, he was yelling that Jake lost every single round, which honestly wasn't far off. Jake was getting walked down the entire time, circling non-stop like he was running laps instead of planting his feet. And Logan's commitment to turning every moment into a Logan moment is almost impressive at this point. It makes you wonder if Jake can ever just have the spotlight to himself, even for one night. Then Ryan Garcia jumped in, saying he thought Tank would have done even worse to Jake. That sounded more like ego talking than real analysis. Lately, Ryan's been louder online than in the ring, and comments like that feel more personal than professional, especially after his recent loss. Sometimes fighters talk just to remind people they're still part of the conversation.
The only way he's gonna win if God really wants him to win.
No, that's facts, bro.
I don't know any other way,
gunner.
bro. Like it's not gonna happen, bro. Cause when Jake gets hit by Anthony, do we even know how he can react to a big punch yet? We don't. He's never even got hit yet, in a real fight. He's never taken a real punch.
The side noise didn't stop there. People online started clowning Jack Doherty for sitting way up in the cheap seats, which added another layer of distraction. Someone brought up Anderson Silva, knocking out Tyron Woodley again, and at this point, it's turned into dark comedy. Woodley has been on the wrong end of too many highlight reels, and it's hard to watch without secondhand embarrassment. There was even random celebrity chatter popping up, and honestly it felt like some of these people should stick to what they're good at instead of chasing combat sports moments that don't fit them. By the end, even the crowd seemed more interested in everything happening around the fight than the fight itself. Toward the end, influencers were fighting for camera angles, like it was a competition of its own. Someone nearby was clearly out of it, acting reckless on live television without a care in the world. The whole scene felt chaotic, messy, and unfocused. And that's probably the lasting image Jake walks away with. Not just the loss, but the circus surrounding it. That's what replays when the lights are off and the noise finally dies down. At the end of the day, you still have to give Jake some credit for stepping into that ring. The size difference was obvious from the start. He was facing someone who looked 30 to 40 pounds heavier, a former world-class boxer with an Olympic gold medal. That's not a light assignment by any stretch. Most people talking online would never even consider taking that risk. What really stands out is that Jake stayed conscious the entire time. A lot of fighters wouldn't have. That toughness alone is probably what keeps his future interesting. The crowd finally got what they came for. A real test, real danger, and real consequences inside the ring. Moving forward, the fight that makes the most sense is Jake versus Tommy Fury. That rematch feels right now, especially after Jake has more experience and more rounds behind him. Let me know down in the comments who you think Jake should fight next, and whether you actually enjoyed this matchup. Personally, this fight was way more entertaining than last year's event against Mike Tyson. Either way, the conversation around Jake Paul isn't going anywhere. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to comment, like, and share this video so more people can see it. There are plenty more knockouts, controversies, and wild moments coming that still need to be covered. I'll see you on the next one.